inside the bank heist that took 88 minutes. It was exactly 9:32 a.m. when the first alarm went off inside the First National Bank of Chicago. The sound echoed through the marble halls like a siren from another world. People screamed and dropped to the floor as three masked men burst through the glass doors with military precision. Their movements were fast, sharp, and practiced. One of them shouted, 88 minutes. That's all we've got. Move. The leader, known later only as Carter, checked the silver stopwatch strapped to his wrist. The timer began counting down from 88:00. Every second mattered. The hostages trembled as one man sealed the doors with a steel bar, another disabled the cameras, and Carter walked calmly to the teller counter. "We're not here to hurt anyone," he said, his voice even. "We're here for what's ours." By the time the police received the first emergency call, the crew had already taken full control. The building was locked down, windows blacked out, communication jammed. Outside, squad cars lined the streets while crowds formed behind police tape. No one inside or outside knew that Carter's team had studied the bank's layout for months. They knew exactly where every vault, alarm, and exit was located, and how long each would take to reach. Inside the bank, one of the hostages, a young teller named Emily Price, whispered to a coworker, "Why 88 minutes? Why not just rob it and run?" Carter overheard her and smiled faintly. "Because, Miss Price," he said, "this isn't just about money. It's about timing." The tension in the air was thick. Every tick of the stopwatch felt louder than the rain outside. At minute 12, Carter's second-in-command, Mason, opened the security panel behind the counter. Wires sparked as he cut the live feed. "Security's blind," he said. Carter nodded. "Good. That buys us 15 minutes. At minute 20, the third member, Ryan, rolled out a large black case and snapped it open. Inside were precision drills and a stethoscope. He started on the vault door, sweat glistening under his mask. 2 tumblers down, he muttered. 3 to go. Carter glanced at his stopwatch. 67 minutes left. Everything was on schedule. But outside, the police had already identified the bank's blueprint. Detective Mark Dalton, a veteran negotiator, stepped out of his car and surveyed the scene. "Lock down every street within 5 blocks, he ordered. "Nobody goes in or out." He looked up at the clock tower across the street. It was 9:48 a.m. The heist had been going for 16 minutes. Inside, the robbers were calm but focused. Carter paced near the hostages, whispering counts under his breath. Emily, still terrified, watched him carefully. Something about his calmness didn't fit. He wasn't desperate. He was calculating. At minute 35, Mason's radio crackled. "We got movement outside," a lookout whispered. "They brought SWAT." Carter didn't panic. "Right on time," he said softly. "Keep drilling." At minute 50, the first vault opened. Stacks of cash, bonds, and safety deposit boxes lined the room like treasure. Ryan began loading bags with precision, keeping his gloves clean. Mason watched the clock. 38 minutes, he said. "We're cutting it close." Carter smiled. Close is the point. Back outside, Detective Dalton picked up his megaphone. "This is the Chicago Police Department. You're surrounded. If anyone inside can hear me, no one needs to get hurt." His voice echoed through the heavy rain. Inside, Emily looked at Carter, hoping he would surrender, but he only stared at his stopwatch and whispered, 40 minutes left. Then, suddenly, the lights went out. The bank was plunged into darkness. A low hum filled the air as the backup generator failed to start. Carter's smile vanished. Mason cursed under his breath. That wasn't supposed to happen. Carter checked the timer, 38:45, and whispered, "Everyone, stay calm. We adapt." He turned to Mason. "Check the breaker." Mason ran to the back room, flashlight in hand. The darkness felt endless. Then came a sharp sound, metal scraping against metal. Carter shouted, "Mason, what's going on back there?" No answer. He called again. Still silence. Then, from deep in the dark, came the unmistakable sound of a gun cocking. Emily gasped. Carter raised his weapon toward the shadows. The stopwatch continued to tick down, glowing faintly in the dark. 37:59, 37:58, and then a gunshot shattered the silence. The gunshot rang through the darkness like thunder. Emily screamed and dropped to the floor. The sound echoed off the walls, then silence swallowed the room again. The lights flickered once, twice, then came back on. Mason was lying near the electrical panel, his flashlight rolling across the floor. Blood spread slowly beneath him. Carter froze, eyes locked on his fallen partner. "Ryan!" he shouted. Ryan ran over, still holding the vault bag. He looked at Mason's wound. It was deep, right below the collarbone. "He's hit bad," Ryan said. "I don't see the shooter." Carter scanned the shadows, jaw tight. No one leaves this room. Nobody moves. The hostages were crying quietly. Emily's hands shook as she clutched her knees. Her eyes darted from the wounded man to Carter's wristwatch. 37:11. The timer hadn't stopped. Even as his friend bled on the floor, Carter never paused to count down. "Get pressure on that wound," he said calmly. "We still have a job to finish." Ryan stared at him in disbelief. "He's dying, Carter." Carter didn't look up. "So will we if we don't finish this." Outside, Detective Dalton's team was setting up sniper positions on nearby rooftops. Rainwater dripped from his cap as he spoke into his radio. "They've gone dark for almost 10 minutes. That's not good." A negotiator beside him adjusted her headset. "Sir, we just picked up one gunshot from inside. We don't know who fired." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "Then we assume someone's hurt. Keep the perimeter tight." Back inside, Ryan tore his sleeve to wrap Mason's wound. Mason groaned, clutching Carter's arm. "Someone's inside with us," he whispered weakly. "I saw movement near the breaker before I got hit." Carter's expression hardened. "You're sure?" Mason nodded faintly. "Positive." Carter turned to Emily. "Who else was in here when we came in?" She stammered. Just us, I swear." He studied her for a moment, then looked back at Ryan. "Check the maintenance corridor. If someone's hiding, I want them found." Ryan moved cautiously, gun raised, sweeping the beam of his flashlight through the narrow hallway. It was quiet except for dripping water. Old paint peeled from the walls. Then, suddenly, he saw a pair of muddy footprints. Small ones, leading behind the janitor's door. Ryan kicked it open. A terrified man in a brown uniform stumbled backward, hands raised. "Don't shoot, please," he cried. It was the building's maintenance worker. "I was trying to get out. I didn't mean..." Carter stepped forward, pointing his weapon. "You fired that shot?" The man shook his head quickly. "No, I heard it too. I thought..." Carter cut him off. "Then you'll stay right here." He motioned for Ryan to zip tie the man's wrists. "You move, you die," Carter said coldly. As Ryan dragged the worker to the center of the room, Mason coughed weakly. "We're running out of time." Carter checked his watch again. 29:58. "Then we move faster," he said. Ryan started loading the last of the vault bags. The hostages sobbed quietly. Carter glanced toward the entrance. Through the tinted windows, flashing red and blue lights reflected off the marble floor. He knew SWAT would move soon. The plan had always been to leave before they breached, but Mason's injury had slowed everything down. "New exit," Carter muttered. "We'll take the underground loading dock." Ryan frowned. That wasn't part of the plan. "It is now." Outside, Detective Dalton spoke urgently into his radio. "They've tripped motion sensors in the lower level. They're moving toward the rear exit." He turned to the SWAT captain. "You've got 30 minutes before they disappear underground. Move in." Inside the bank, Carter could hear faint metallic thuds, doors being breached upstairs. He tightened his grip on his gun. "They're coming." Ryan shoved the last bag into the duffel and helped Mason to his feet. The three of them moved toward the stairwell, dragging their loot and the frightened janitor. Emily watched them leave, her heart pounding. Then she noticed something. Mason had dropped his walkie-talkie near the vault door. It was still on. Static hummed softly. She crawled toward it as quietly as she could, grabbed it and whispered, "Hello?" Can anyone hear me? Dalton's voice came through, faint but clear. Who is this? Emily Price, she whispered. I'm inside. They're going downstairs to the basement. Dalton froze. Stay where you are. Emily, help is coming. But before she could answer, a shadow fell over her. Carter was standing right behind her. He reached down, plucked the radio from her hand, and stared at her coldly. Looks like we got a snitch, he said softly. Emily's face went pale. Carter raised his weapon slightly, then stopped as his earpiece crackled. Ryan's voice came through. Carter, we've got a problem. The dock doors are sealed. We're trapped. Carter looked toward the stairwell, his watch ticking loudly. 1943? 1942. His expression darkened. They just changed the game. Rain poured harder outside as the Chicago skyline vanished behind a wall of gray. The police floodlights around the bank glowed like cold moons in the mist. Inside, Carter's crew stood frozen at the bottom of the stairwell. The heavy steel door to the underground dock was locked from the outside, the keypad blinking red. Try it again, Carter ordered. Ryan slammed the panel with his fist. It's dead. They've shut it down remotely. Carter checked his watch, 1857. He looked up at Mason, pale and sweating, barely able to stand. We've still got time, Carter said, though his voice trembled for the first time that day. We just need another exit. Ryan snapped. We don't have another exit. They've sealed everything. Mason coughed, blood on his lip. There's the old elevator shaft. It's behind the generator room. Carter turned sharply. Can it get us out? Mason nodded weakly. It connects to the parking lot across the alley. Maintenance used it before they built the new lift. That was all Carter needed to hear. Move. They dragged the loot and Mason's limp body through the dim corridor. The air was thick and dusty, pipes dripping overhead. Somewhere above, they could hear the muffled shouts of SWAT teams preparing to breach the main floor. The sound of heavy boots echoed faintly, getting closer. As they reached the generator room, Carter stopped dead. A flickering light hung from the ceiling. The elevator shaft gate stood half open, but there was a problem. The floor had caved in around the base, leaving a dark hole that stretched into blackness. Ryan peered down. It's a 30-foot drop, he muttered. We'll never climb it. Carter's jaw clenched. He looked back toward the hallway. Then we buy time. Upstairs, Detective Dalton was moving to the main floor, pistol drawn, voice steady. Secure the hostages, he told his team. We moved down in 2. Suddenly, his radio crackled. Sir, thermal imaging shows movement in the sublevel. 3 heat signatures. Dalton paused. They're boxed in. Keep the perimeter tight. Nobody fires unless I say so. Back below, Mason groaned. Carter, listen. You can still make it out. Leave me. Carter knelt beside him, gripping his shoulder. We finish this together. You hear me? Ryan kicked open a metal cabinet and pulled out a thick coil of wire. This might get us across, he said, tying one end to a pipe. If we can swing to that ledge, we're out. Carter nodded. Do it. The sound of footsteps above them grew louder. Metallic bangs as SWAT Pride opened the stairwell door. Carter raised his gun toward the ceiling. We've got company. Ryan tied the wire tight and tossed the other end over the shaft. It'll hold, he said, though his voice cracked. Mason coughed violently, his breath shallow. Go first, Carter ordered. Ryan gripped the wire and swung across, barely landing on the opposite ledge. It works, he shouted. Come on. Carter slung Mason's arm around his shoulder and helped him to the edge. You ready? Mason nodded weakly. Carter pushed off, both men swinging over the gap as flashbangs exploded above. The blast of light blinded them. The wire snapped. Carter fell hard, landing halfway across. Mason slipped, his body tumbling into the darkness below. Mason! Carter's scream echoed through the shaft. For a moment, there was no sound, then a dull thud far below. Silence followed. Ryan reached down, grabbing Carter's arm. We've got to go, man. They're right behind us. Carter hesitated, staring into the pit. His watch beeped, 9:12 remaining. He gritted his teeth and climbed up. They stumbled into the narrow upper passage, leading toward the parking lot. The air was cold and damp, filled with dust. Behind them, SWAT voices echoed through the shaft. Ryan pushed open a metal hatch, revealing a dim light. "We're out," he said, almost laughing. But when Carter crawled through, he froze. The exit wasn't a parking lot. It was the old storm tunnel, and waiting inside were floodlights and armed officers aiming directly at them. Dalton stood at the front, gun drawn. "It's over, Carter." The building surrounded. Carter looked at his watch. 6:45. The ticking felt deafening now. He slowly raised his hands. "You're too early," he said with a strange grin. "The game's not over yet." Dalton frowned. "What game?" Carter nodded toward the tunnel wall. "You might want to evacuate that building in the next 6 minutes." Dalton's eyes widened. "What did you do?" Carter smiled coldly. "You think we came for the money?" Before Dalton could react, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Dalton turned toward the sound, a deep mechanical groan, coming from the direction of the bank vault. Then came the explosion. The explosion ripped through the ground with the force of a freight train. The entire street above the First National Bank trembled as glass shattered, alarms blared, and smoke shot up to the pavement vents like geysers. Detective Dalton threw himself against the tunnel wall, shielding his face as a rush of hot air blasted past. When the dust settled, all that remained was the echo of crumbling concrete. Dalton coughed, waving the smoke away. "Get those lights back on," he yelled. His team scrambled, shining flashlights through the tunnel. But Carter and Ryan were gone. Dalton's radio crackled. "Command to Dalton. What just happened? We're getting reports of a detonation in the vault." Dalton pressed his earpiece. "They've triggered explosives. Contain the perimeter and get bomb squad in here now." Back inside the bank, chaos reigned. Fire alarms screamed as sprinklers poured water over smoking debris. The vault room was gone, a gaping hole now open into the lower tunnel network. Cash and debris floated in pools of water. The 88-minute heist had turned into a war zone. Meanwhile, deep in the old storm drain, Carter and Ryan crawled through the dust, ears ringing. The explosion had blown open the concrete wall they were standing behind. Ryan coughed hard, voice shaking. "You almost killed us." Carter, blood running down his temple, glared back. "You wanted an exit. I gave us one." They stumbled forward, flashlights trembling in their hands. The tunnel stretched endlessly into the dark. Carter checked his watch. 3:58 remaining. "We're almost there," he muttered. "Where?" Ryan demanded. Carter didn't answer. He just pointed ahead. At the far end of the tunnel, faint light spilled from a circular iron grate. Behind it was an underground parking structure. Their true escape route. Parked there, waiting under flickering lights, was a nondescript white van. Ryan's eyes widened. "You planned this." Carter smirked. "Every second." They reached the grate, pried it loose, and crawled through. The van's back doors were open. Inside sat a woman wearing a dark baseball cap, typing on a laptop. She looked up, calm as if she'd been expecting them. "You're late," she said. "Traffic," Carter replied dryly, tossing the duffel bags inside. Ryan climbed in after him. "Let's get out of here before." A voice echoed from behind them. "Freeze." Dalton stood at the other end of the parking lot, pistol raised. He was covered in dust, but still steady, eyes locked on Carter. "It's over. Don't make me shoot." Carter sighed. Detective Dalton, always 5 minutes early. "Drop the gun." Dalton shouted. Carter slowly lowered his weapon, but kept his left hand near his watch. "You don't understand what's about to happen," he said. "That explosion wasn't for the vault. It was for the records." Dalton frowned. "What records?" "The ones that prove what this bank's been hiding for years," Carter said. "Money laundering government accounts, offshore deals. The real thieves are the ones you work for." Dalton hesitated. His finger loosened on the trigger. "You're lying." Carter smiled faintly. "Check the vault. You'll see the drives are gone." Ryan's voice cracked. Carter, come on. We gotta go.